Hi folks, I'm on holidays, but I thought I'd deal with this really important subject. It's the most misunderstood and definitely the most abused verse in the whole New Testament. And here's the verse. Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 27. And just as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this, the judgment. Just as it is appointed for men to die once, and after this, the judgment. This verse is abused and interpreted to mean, after you die, you face the judgment, and when you face the judgment, the door of mercy shuts, and it's all over. There's no second chance. That is not what the Bible says at all. That is not what this verse is saying at all. So what do we make of this verse? Well, first of all, did you notice that was only half a sentence? So if we read the whole sentence, we probably might get a better picture of what's going on. So let's read verses 27 and 28 and notice the deliberate parallels by the author. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment, so also Jesus was offered and died once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly await for him, he will appear a second time apart from sin for salvation. Just as men die once because of their sins, Jesus died once to take away sins. Did you notice that the first part of both verses are direct parallels, and so are the second part? The second part speaks about dying once and then men face judgment, and then Jesus dies once to take away sins. For what? To appear a second time to save. Now just think about that. If these are parallel statements, then humans die once because of their sins. Jesus died once to take away sins. After humans die once, they face the judgment. After Jesus died once, later, the second coming, which will result in an act of salvation. I'll come back to that point in a moment. These two verses need to be understood in the context of the chapter as a whole. What's Hebrews 9 about? Hebrews 9, the author compares and contrasts the limited results of animal sacrifices to take away sins in the Old Covenant with the perfect results of Jesus' sacrifice in the New Covenant to obliterate sins. Let me say that again. What's Hebrews 9 about? The writer compares and contrasts the ineffectiveness of the sacrifice of animals to take away sins in the Old Covenant with the total effectiveness of the sacrifice of Jesus in the New Covenant to obliterate sins. And in that context, we come to the verses in question, which is the climax of the chapter, which talks about the results of Jesus' death at the end time when he appears a second time. And it's good news the whole way through. And now that you know the context, listen to those verses again. Hebrews 9, 27 and 28. In that context, and just as it is appointed for men to die once, and then sometime later face the judgment, so Jesus died once to take away sins, to appear a second time to save. If humans dying once is placed in parallel to Jesus dying once, then the future judgment that takes place after human death, the judgment, is placed in direct parallel with the second coming of Jesus, which is a judgment that results in salvation. Judgment in the book of Hebrews is good news. It's about Jesus bringing the cross, which is an objective, universal, finished work, to a subjective, completed work when he's going to obliterate sin and make people saved, or as the Greek word says, made whole subjectively, experientially, where sin is totally wiped out from the universe. So when Paul talks about death followed by a future judgment, he's talking about the death of Jesus, which is followed by the future judgment, second coming, when he will appear a second time to save. To judgment means to save experientially. To judge means to save experientially. That's what this verse is saying. It's not doom and gloom at all. Bless you. I'm going back onto my holiday.